The liberal overhaul continues. I'm Brian Lilly with TheRebel.media. Well, another day, another headline heralding the liberals undoing what the conservatives accomplished over the last 10 years. This time, it's the Hill Times, a Parliament Hill-based newspaper that covers the minutiae of Canadian politics, reporting that the liberals are promising radical changes to the Citizenship Act. That comes from John McCallum, the immigration minister himself, as well as promises from Liberal MPs that they're going to do away with requirements to have new citizens speak English or French as part of them granting citizenship. Radical changes, a dramatic overhaul of the Citizenship Act. This from John McCallum, a man whose department is so seized with trying to bring in 25,000 Syrian refugees in such short order that his department cannot respond to access to information requests or undergo public scrutiny on how the refugee rush is going. But they have time for radical changes, dramatic overhaul of citizenship, and undoing all the changes the Conservatives brought in. What kind of changes did the Conservatives bring in? Did they dramatically strip down the number of new immigrants they would bring in every year? No. In fact, they kept those numbers at historic highs. They kept the numbers at about 250,000 a year just for permanent residents. But they did tinker around the edges. They favored economic immigrants, people that were coming here that had skills Canada needed, instead of favoring, well, grandparents for family reunification purposes. The Liberals have already promised to double family reunification. They've promised to now do away with a requirement to learn English or French as a requirement for citizenship. It's actually been there for a long time. It goes back to Liberal governments of years past. But the Liberals spent decades ignoring it, and the Conservatives decided that they would enforce it. I guess it comes down to worldview, but the Liberals just don't like the idea that immigrants might come to Canada and integrate in some way. I'm not saying the Conservatives tried to do with multiculturalism whole hog. No, not at all. But they did try and encourage a degree of integration, assimilation, if you will, into the new culture so that the people arriving here would become part of Canada, not separate sections of Canada. That's the Liberal view of multiculturalism. You can all go off and live in your own enclaves and never mingle. It's a bizarre view of multiculturalism. It's one that's failed in Europe. In Europe, there are generations that have lived there and not learned the language. We are seeing problems with that now. That is part of the anti-migrant push that's going on in Europe right now. They already have populations that have not assimilated, not integrated at all, and now they're seeing hundreds of thousands more people come in. Is this the way that Canada wants to go? I would say no. Now, this will have people say, well, you're anti-immigrant. No, I'm not. I'm the son of immigrants, for a start. Both of my parents came to Canada in 1968. It's true, they spoke the language. They came from Scotland. Now, some will argue Scotsmen don't speak English. Well, if you met my father, you would argue that they don't either. But the fact is, my entire neighborhood was made up of immigrants. The people I went to school with were the children of immigrants. The fastest way for success is for those coming here to learn the language, to have skills they can apply to a job, and to integrate quickly so that they are not being left behind, marginalized by the society that welcomes them and says, we'll give you a land of opportunity. This is the wrong move for the Liberals to make, but they're going to do it to try and pander to votes for who, I don't know. Because in my experience, this isn't the type of thing that immigrants ask for. In fact, the majority of the changes that I saw brought in by the Conservatives on the immigration file were quite often welcomed by immigrants, especially cracking down on bogus immigrants, on bogus refugees. Why? Because the people that wait in line to come here, that want to come and be part of Canada, they don't want people skipping the line. They don't want people that want to live apart in Canada. They want others like them who come here to build Canada, to make it better. I guess the Liberals just have a different view, and that includes one where you can't talk to your neighbor because there's no requirement, no incentive to do so.